No, sir. What? Downstairs.
Hi, good morning all. How are we doing today?
Thank you. How are you?
Good morning. Morning.
Morning.
Morning. Okay, so I trust that you all had a productive week and happy to see we all made it back here safe. We are now halfway through the class. Class is 10 weeks. We're on unit 5. We have one person so far sitting in the exam comfortably with their 30%. That means they would have done their homework. They would have attended their civic organization, and they would have also, participated by reading newspaper and sharing with us. So that's one out of 12 so far, and I think we have about 20 persons in this class. Now, what happened in my last class was that on review day, instead of doing review, we had 45 minutes of everybody trying to get their 5%. Okay, so we really, really don't want that to happen. So there are 5 weeks, please. In fact, I'm going to say now on review day, nobody can share their civic organization. So you have the next 4 weeks, and we don't want to wait for the last class as well to have 10 or 20 persons doing it. So I know your schedules are very busy. I know it's very tough to go to school and balance home as well as work. But please, like I said, if all of this helps prepare you to be successful in the final exam, and most persons that go, at least 90% of the persons that go, do find it beneficial, and find it worthwhile, and there's value for the time that they spend. Okay, so if anybody wants to share that they went this week, that'll be very good. Hopefully we'll get more persons. We only have 2 persons who would have went in the first 5 weeks. Get 1 person with their full 30% already, so they're comfortable. And so the rest of you, I need you, see, that's just 13 persons here. The rest of you, please catch up. And if, I guess by next week, if between today and next week, next class, I'll schedule some persons to go, just because like I said, we don't want 10 of you on the last day of class trying to get in your 5%. Okay. Are we also looking at the classwork? I haven't gotten a lot of questions back from the classwork. Are we keeping abreast at least scanning over it and ensuring that we can answer all those questions. Again, like I said, they are past exam questions and they may pop up. Again, the computer spits out some questions, you never know. They may pop up on your final exam. So how are we, Crystal, with the classwork?
When you say classwork, you mean send some more questions?
Owen. What you mean what I mean classwork? Could Renika, use keep Owen in check. Tell Owen what I mean, please.
I was just typing, good morning, everyone. I was just typing it to him in the chat. The
Okay,
paper,
thank you.
Owen, she emailed us like 4 papers. One had the homework and then the next one is the classwork where we have to answer some questions every chapter, every week, Owen. Watch Owen, tell me he ain't know what you talking about.
My apologies. I was thinking that was 2 homework. Okay.
Owen, stay close to Renika, please. Stay close. Stay close. She can help you out. She can make sure you, Renika, you know, sometimes man, we have to hold their hands. Please hold,
Yes,
hold
ma'am.
her hand. Please hold his hand.
He good.
Please. She's a good person to keep in your network, Owen. She can keep you on the straight and narrow. Okay, so Owen, you know what we're talking about now?
Yeah, I see it now.
Okay, so I guess you need some more time to confirm whether or not you can answer all those questions.
Yes, ma'am, that'll be good.
Okay, so next you just go through them. It's nothing that you have to submit, but at least we want you to confirm that I know how to answer this question. I know what it's asking, and if you need any help, let us know. Okay, so back to Crystal. What about you, Crystal? You know what we're talking about, you know?
Good morning. Yes, Miss Bullet. I know. I've been following the questions. I feel, I don't want to say pretty confident, but I feel okay in terms of answering them.
Okay, okay, good, very good. Anybody else? Tamarin, what about you? Is Tamarin there, Delancey?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Sorry, could
Okay.
you repeat the question?
Are you comfortable with the classwork questions?
Yes, ma'am, I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, 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 very good. All right, so like I said, just so there are no surprises and you show up to the exam fully prepared. Okay, is there
Yes,
anybody? Oh, okay, thank you. Is there anybody who would have attended their civic organization and they want to get their 5% today? No? Okay. Okay, what about the newspaper?
I went to a Toastmasters meeting and honestly, it was luminaries and I came out of it.
It was, sorry, I didn't hear you.
I came out of it that, I don't know, I tried a Rotary meeting. I think they wasn't connecting to me like I would want them to in the last meeting I attended. So I
Okay, so
didn't like that
you
one.
try something else.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Learn
that's
from that.
fine. Okay, that's fine. Okay, what about the newspaper? What happened in the news this week?
I have the news. It wasn't a newspaper article, but I got some information and I thought it was very interesting on issues of the day. Love 97 on Tuesday. It was Tuesday, I think it was, and they were talking about tax avoidance and tax evasion, and they were talking about how some investors, they move away from their country and they come here, they put their money here in this country in order for them to avoid tax in their country. And some of the callers were saying that that's illegal, that's wrong, but the host kept telling them that tax avoidance is legal. So I thought that was a very interesting discussion.
Okay, good, Owen. And yes, again, it is indeed legal. You can avoid, but you cannot evade. Okay, and so what if you go through the proper process in order to, I guess, get citizenship or residency in Bahamas? You have to purchase a house or real estate worth 750,000 or more. And a lot of persons, you know, they get a cheaper house, or sometimes we had a client who said, well, I applied and I bought the house, but I did not get approved, you know, because there were some other deliverables that had to be met. And so in the interim, you still, you know, you still have to pay the tax to the country where you were born or where you reside. And so we have to ensure that we, you know, have the proper paperwork. We can't only ask for a proof of address and then you fill out our CRS or FACA forms. We have to actually get a copy of the residency or the citizenship, sometimes, or work permit or whatever permit it is. And a lot of times I found when we were doing the due diligence on the file, when it was time to report CRS and FACA, there was no citizenship, there was no copy, or some persons have a temporary card until they bring in some deliverables, and if they don't bring it in, those cards expire, and so you have to look out for all of that. Then there is Shakira. Remember now, you can move to the Bahamas, you can get residency. However, there's a reasonableness test, and that reasonableness test says that if you spend, even though you're a citizen of the Bahamas now, she was from Spain. If you spend more than 183 days in Spain, then you're still liable to the taxes. So of course, she perhaps didn't know about the reasonableness test, and she declared that she lives now as a citizen of the Bahamas. She has a house on Paradise Island. However, she had been on tour, and so all throughout Spain, so they were able, I guess, from her tour dates or whatever information they received, to confirm that she indeed spent more than the 6 months in Spain, and therefore they don't care where you have residency. You still driving on the road. Within that 6 months, you still may have gone to the hospital, or your children may be in the public school, and so therefore you are liable for that tax. Okay, so that's the clause there. You avoid once you don't spend the 183 days or more. And when you spend 183 days, then or more, then you're evading. Okay, so there's a thin line. So very, very relevant, Owen. And thank you for sharing. Okay, anybody else?
I saw in the newspaper that they had come to a settlement with Shane Gibson where he put in an application that there was malicious prosecution on him, and they settled for, I think they said 2.5. And when I saw it all, I could think about how we discussed that. Okay, we might have like legislation in place, but the Financial Action Task Force might see us as kind of being playful and jokeful, because still when we carry politicians or persons up in senior positions, we don't ever follow through. And it's never whereas they actually get prosecuted. They only go to court.
Right. And everybody now is free. Even Rudy King. My God, Rudy King has been defrauding. I mean, he defrauded American Express. He was sitting up with the president or the prime minister of the Dominican Republic, pretending to be an ambassador from the Bahamas. He is always, every time there's a hurricane, he say donate to the King Foundation, and they just drop all the charges. He stole the $600,000 from the post office. They just drop all those charges. So I mean, like you said, they're gonna think that, okay, we took the first step in bringing some politicians. However, everybody got off, and now with the case of Shane Gibson, that was a mockery. Like I said, it's not Shane's first rodeo. However, the police officer said, you know, I took a statement, and the statement did not match with the two witnesses. So I called them in, and I told them to come and change the statements to make sure it matched. I mean, how could you make a mockery of you know, the court system like that? So, and now he is suing for reputational risk to the sum of $2.5 million. When you have a long rap sheet, I mean, my God. I'm sorry, I wouldn't be surprised if the IMF I don't know, blacklist us for this foolishness, complete foolishness. But anyway, that's just Miss Bullet opinion. I'm sorry. It ain't about F&M and BLB. That's just, only poor people is go to jail, people. And even if you win your case, you win it on a technicality, not that you wasn't guilty now. You win it on a technicality. And now you suing for, okay, so I guess Frank Smith could sue, Kendrick Dorsett could sue, Rudy perhaps could even sue. What you think? What y'all think?
And then ain't even the government who paying it, it's the taxpayers who paying it all these monies.
There you go. There you go. And these are the reasons why corruption perception indexes drop. Okay, we are at 64, but I am certain when they look at this, I don't even know what to say, they're making a mockery of the law. We already have never ever brought anybody before the I mean, there was Pinland back in the what day it was. You remember when they had the commission of inquiry back in the day against Pinland? Just because, I mean, how do you measure a man? Is it what he does right or what he does wrong? Because we just let Adrian Fox go, or we wrote all those letters of recommendation, he should not go to jail because he is a philanthropist. However, he did indeed human traffic. They did get catch, and the person who was in the boat with him got 10 years. So is it you do some philanthropy and you don't go to jail? Could somebody tell me, Tania? That's how it works?
It could be debated.
I believe, philanthropy plays a part in it, because after you donate so much money into these organizations, a school and stuff, and the government don't wanna get that money taken away, I believe that they say, okay, let me give them a slap on the wrist so this flow of money or flow of cash does not stop.
But is it right?
It ain't right, but they become
right. So if Bernie Madoff had donated some money to the, say, Rampley home, he should not have gone to jail. Nighty knows the white major, or I don't know. Does this, how do you measure it?
Morning, Bullet, though. I think a part of the problem too is just the way our legal system is set up. Like, you can't do stuff like that in the US because their laws will simply not allow for it. Over here, if you hold a high enough position, if you are the prime minister, you could just say, you know what, let this one go, and nothing is ever heard of from that again. But at least in the US or in other jurisdictions where, regardless of how high you are in government, you can't make things go away. But over here,
oh, no. Okay, remember Trump? And he pardoned all those people. Remember Trump pardoned all his friends, even though they were already in jail spending time, pardoned them.
That is true, but at least those persons went to jail at some point. Over here, the cases oftentimes don't even make it to trial.
Yeah, they make it to a foolish trial, and then they sue us for reputational risk.
Right. So it's not even about whether Shane Gibson is innocent or guilty. If these things ever make it to court, like you said, it's a mockery. It's not even like a real trial. Like, who are the lawyers responsible for this? It's embarrassing.
He had three or four queen counsels. Justine, go ahead. Is Justine?
You called me, Miss Bala?
Yeah, you have your hand raised. You want to say
something? Yes. Good morning. Yes, I just wanted to share my little piece from the newspaper. I got in a few minutes late. I don't know if anyone got to share on this. This was a headline in Monday's paper about 2.92 billion of Russian funds in the Bahamas. I just want to read the little expert they had here. That the central bank said international bank and trust companies had about 420 million in deposits and 2.5 billion in custody or trust assets for which the ultimate beneficial owners were from or connected to Russia. That information was up to February 28th. The greatest proportion of Russian exposure would be linked to the international sector. However, the central bank is currently canvassing domestic financial institutions, that is the commercial banks, money transmission business, and electronic money service providers, to ascertain any level of exposure within those sectors. The bank said in a statement released on last week, Friday, the information disclosed today are aggregates for the international banking and trust sector and not specific to any sanctioned interests. It went on to say that a central bank statement, which came in response to press inquiries, comes after financial service regulators announced that Bahamian companies must comply with sanctions Western countries have put on Russia for its war against Ukraine. And then we had Mr. Gowan Bo from Fidelity, who said that when you think about the 2.5 billion being connected with Russian beneficial owners, he said that it's less than 2.5% of the total assets under the Bahamian administration in the Bahamas, and that kind of put it into context.
Okay, yeah, I think we talked about this last week where we said, yeah, so what is gonna happen now is those very rich people with that $4 billion is gonna put pressure on Putin to say, listen, we need our money because now it's stuck in the Bahamas. We have bills to pay, we have companies to run, and we need access to our funds. So you will see them putting pressure, hopefully on Putin to end this war. Okay. All right, very good. Thank you for sharing. Mikhail, go ahead.
Morning again, guys. So my article is was in the Guardian, and it's about the rise in these schemes. Securities Commission Board released advisory amid complaints from public financial schemes. So the latest one is something called Evolve Invest Limited. And the Securities Commission was basically saying that in the last decade, there's been like a 400% increase in these type of schemes. And they're just warning persons just to be more alert because this particular entity, this Evolve Investment Limited, they're saying that on their website that they're regulated by the Securities Commission, and they're not. And essentially they offer like online trading brokerage services. So those things have gotten very popular, I would say, like in the last decade as well. Like there are a lot of these little online brokerage firms now, and this is just another one. But the only difference is because it's not regulated, it's obviously more risky. And then they go on to just kind of like warn about if you feel like an entity might be a scheme. So typically, if you're paid based on how many members you recruit, chances are that is a scheme. If how persons are paid is based on like when they entered the company, like who came in first gets the most and who came in second, so forth and so on. Those are examples of like pyramid or Ponzi schemes. So I just thought it was interesting just to see how these scammers really are evolving with the times.
Correct, Mikhail, and like every day that's a new pyramid scheme. I mean, they used to be like, it started off like with Amway, but I mean Amway was legit, but just where you would sell these products and services. Then I can't even remember the different names, but anytime you have to bring 8 people to get paid, and they can send you some books. Let me tell you something, people do not read. And it sounds very remedial, but a lot of persons in the world find a difficulty in reading. And so, yeah, they will give you books. You could pay the first $100 and you can encourage everybody to put in $250. But whenever you have to bring somebody, you do it, you don't say it's on behalf of this company. And so please don't get caught up in these schemes. The latest thing has been like the FX. Listen to me. Capital markets and trading is very, very complex. Okay. There's an exam called a Series 7, and you have to refresh that every 3 years. It's either the Canadian Securities or the Series 7 exam. Okay, very, very, very complex. That's the designation that you need in order to trade. Not only do you need that exam, you have to watch the market. You have to read perspectives. You got to see what's happening in the news every day. You got to watch the governments, because all of that triggers the stock market. Okay, so again, because they know of the complexity of that, then they sell it to persons and saying, oh yeah, it's easy, or we can help you watch the market, or what have you. It never works. You might have to go and sit the Series 7 and dedicate your time to watching the market for the particular stock that you're interested in, and look at the shocks and the triggers to the market, or you have to pay somebody. And when you pay these traders normally take 50% of what you earn if you can't do it yourself. Okay, so there is a legitimate world out there that is regulated, and like Mikhail said, you look up to see who they are regulated by in case you have an event. And even very popular companies that are licensed and are doing it the proper way, it's very, it's expensive, and there's a loss depending on the risk you take. The higher the risk, the more the possibility of the money that you may lose, or the more money you would make, the more risk you take. But again, make sure it's regulated. Make sure you go through the proper channels, and don't try to do it yourself unless you are prepared. Sit the securities exam, watch the market all day. With the FX, the foreign exchange, the euro and the the sterling, they fluctuate all day long. You have to watch the market all day long, and you have to be able to be available to purchase right away before the rate changes right away. So that requires a lot of time and attention to detail. Okay, so again, they are selling it. Oh, it's going to be easy. You can trade, but they don't explain to you how much you have to read and how complex it is. And so they, again, leveraging off your ignorance. Many people sign up for it. And sometimes people are dedicated in the beginning and they do make some money, but then afterwards you see downhill. Lots of losses. Okay, so be very careful of all these schemes.
Ms. Bullitt,
Yes.
question. With the Securities Commission, do they send out, or do they have on their website? I don't think I've added myself to their website as yet, but do they have a list of persons who they have confirmed as legitimate persons for underneath them? Because
Yes.
I know that how Mikhail was saying that they just had a little thing underneath their picture or their website that says they are regulated by the Securities Commission when they weren't.
Yeah, I could show you. Let me see if I can pull up the website just to show you. Okay, they have somewhere in here that says licensees. So they will tell you who is licensed under the Securities Industry Act, the Investment Fund Act, who are the financial and corporate service providers, and the people for digital and registered exchanges. So let's see, securities firms. These are the things that they have to do somewhere in here. Okay, there you go. Did you see where I went all the way to the bottom? And so it tells you registered and licensee status search. And so these are the people who are registered under the DAC and who are allowed. So let me see, FTX Digital, Delkian Chain Limited, Longgate Bahamas Limited. Only 3 persons should be offering you cryptocurrency, digital assets, of 3 firms, I should say. And they tell you who is the chairman, who's the secretary, who's the CEO, and the compliance officer as well. It tells you right there. Okay, all that information is right there.
Thank you.
Okay, and so you could go search it. SIA registrants, investment funds, everything is there. Okay, so you anytime you go to a website, you find out exactly, you know, who is responsible. And then, of course, you would do a review or research on that company to see, you know, any litigation out there, any customer complaints, and any negative media out there on the company. And sometimes there is negative media. It's not, you know, it doesn't mean the company is all bad, but then you'd want to, you know, do some research, even when you're applying for jobs, because we had somebody who, you know, their company was closing down, and rather than wait for their company to close, they left because they, you know, they said, oh, before all the jobs go, I need to work. I don't want to be paid out. But they went through a disastrous, I'm talking about a disaster of all disaster company. And that company closed down within 6 months of her leaving without her package, you know. So people, you know, there's news out there, and find out the type of customers that these companies hold, and whether they're high, medium, or low, and the country is. If right now, if they say our business is predominantly from Russia, would you be leaving your job to go work somewhere whose business predominantly from Russia? No, right? So do your research. Okay. Any other questions or concerns anybody else wants to share? No? Okay, good. So keep abreast of what's going on. Like I said, there are also, and I think when I signed on to the Securities Commission website, on the front page, let's go back. There was industry update being advised. Advertised, sorry. Right here you go, industry update. So all of you who are licensed by the Securities Commission should be attending these industry updates. And even if your company does not offer digital assets, that just means they don't offer it yet. Okay, so stay abreast, stay ahead of the game. And this is on March 31st at 10 a.m. And so you can ask your company, you know, may I have my lunch hour early, or will they allow you some time? I think this may be online. It says webinar, so it is online. And again, all of you should attend, because again, this is a new technology. We are all moving into the digital asset world. And of course, you know, our country is too cash intensive. And so one of the things the governor has done is, you know, put a moratorium on the cash intensive businesses, which are the number houses, as well as the money services businesses. And so that's one thing that he did. And also, like I said, you would see that the Canadian banks say, we just don't have an appetite for the number houses. We don't have an appetite for the cash and go. And so this industry update should be explaining exactly how it affects the risk rating of the country and how they are strategically placing the sand dollar. And again, it's not cryptocurrency. The sand dollar is a digital asset. Okay. And it was rolled out through the central bank. However, it will be regulated under the Securities Commission. Okay. And so a list of very educated speakers. And again, like I said, this is, like I said, keeping abreast of what's happening in your industry, whether your company offers, you know, these assets or not. And I think they roll them out through the credit unions as well. Does anybody work for a credit union? No credit unions? Okay. So, because I know somebody, I think it was a teachers credit union, where they said that they accepted sand dollar now. Okay. Okay, so just so you would know. Okay, great. Okay, so chapter 5, did we continuation in the 4 chapters of risk? Did anybody read chapter 5 and can give us an overview of what chapter 5 says? No, nobody would y'all like would that be
I
a
was still
big-
struggling over chapter 4, but I couldn't get the understanding of that.
Okay, so come, this is what we're here for. Come, we can't
Yep.
move on to a chapter if you don't understand. So what is your question, Owen? Where are you not clear?
This risk frame, I mean, I understand that the risk, but as far as I understand is that the risk framework is the assessment, the appetite, and the rating. But I still, for some strange reason, I can't go in depth with this, with the appetite and the assessment and so forth.
Okay, so let's talk about appetite, right? I like pizza, but I don't like chicken, right? That's appetite, right? Right, Owen?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, right. So my company, nobody wants to be high risk because we don't want to do enhanced due diligence. Remember now, if we are a high risk business, our risk assessment has to be attached to our high risk. And remember, we have to be reviewed every year. Nobody wants to do the extra work. Nobody wants to spend the extra money. Nobody wants to do a risk assessment every year. And now they're saying your audit has to be in line with your assessment. So that means you'll be audited every year. And you know, auditors take 3-4 months of your time right now. You'll constantly be in audit mode if you are high risk. So we try and fix our appetite to make sure that we are not high risk. And so the board of directors will meet and they will decide, do we have an appetite for PEPs? Do we have an appetite for Russia? Do we have an appetite for cryptocurrency? These are high risk products and services. Okay, and so they said, okay, let's not deal with the cryptocurrency, let's not deal with the what was it, what else did I say? Let's not deal with the cryptocurrency, let's not deal with Russia. But we are the Bahamian bank, we are Bank of the Bahamas, so there's no way we could turn away our politically exposed persons. Okay, so we have an appetite for PEPs, and therefore we are going to put controls in place to protect the institutions against Shane Gibson, against Kendrick Dorset. Okay, and what are those controls we are going to put in place? We are going to make sure that the board approves them. We are going to label them as high risk, and we are going to conduct enhanced due diligence on them. Each time they ask for a transaction to avoid what happened with the case with Shane Gibson, we are going to make sure that it's within his profile. So we'll have 2 senior persons sign off on it. Okay, so those are the controls that we are going to put in place to protect us against the risk of having a PEP. Okay, and if we at Bank of the Bahamas and we have an appetite for PEPs, we will say we have appetites for only Bahamian PEPs. We don't have appetite for PEPs from Angola, Russia, St. Lucia. Or we may say we have an appetite for PEPs only from low-risk countries. Okay, so it's just documenting who you are going to do business with. Okay, and based on your decisions, you put controls in place to protect the company against the negative media that, let's just say, Bank of the Bahamas would have suffered every time they talked about the case with Jonathan Ash and Shane Gibson. Or let's use a real life case, because I don't remember them citing the bank where the transactions went through with Jonathan Ash, but for Melanie, for Michelle Reckley, they said this money was taken into CIBC and to the Teachers Credit Union, $1.3 million. Okay, so those 2 banks suffered reputational risk. And regulators and auditors would want to know, what were the staff doing at Teachers Credit Union and CIBC? How did they allow this money to come into this bank? Okay, without it being questioned, without it being verified. Okay, Owen, so that's appetite. Is that clear?
Yeah, understood now.
That's appetite. Okay, so now let's look at, we are going to talk about let me give you and remember we started to look at this last week, okay? Remember now, each department, there's compliance, there's operations, there is finance, credit. So each department will create a library or, you know, a risk framework that says what are our objectives, what is the risk, and what controls we are going to put in place. Okay, so for account opening, our objective is to ensure, can y'all see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. So the objective is to ensure that all new business relationships are within the bank's risk appetite. Okay, that means if we have an appetite, we have an appetite for PEPs. If this is a new account, this is a PEP, it has to be on our appetite list. If this is a new account and this is a high risk country, it has to be in our appetite. We are either say we don't do business with high risk countries or we do business with high risk countries, okay? And it has to be approved in accordance with local and international regulatory frameworks. If they say right now Russia is blocked or sanctioned, right now we can't open a new account for a Russian national. Okay, or somebody who's doing business and they say primarily my business is done through Russia. Okay, what type of possible risk we could face? Reputational. Okay, what's the inherent risk? Accounts will be open without the proper approvals or appropriate approvals. Okay, how do we risk rate this as high risk? Under control, accounts rejected by compliance, private banking get escalated to the compliance committee. So remember now, if that account is labeled low or medium, normally the account, the compliance officer will approve it. If it's high, then the compliance committee or the board. Remember, in all these, the board delegates its authority to senior management or to these committees. Okay, so they approve on behalf of the board. Okay, we will review 100% of the accounts open each month. Okay, and normally compliance approves the account anyway. So this is how, you know, it's not like you have to go and do a second check. Okay, under operations, and each department will have at least 20 or 30 controls. Okay, so this is just an excerpt that, you know, I took so I could give you all a visual. In operations, under filing, we want to ensure safe custody of the client's files and proper record keeping in accordance with regulatory requirements. I had to go to when Royal Bank Miami was open. I had to go there and conduct the training because we were turning off files. Before they used to, you could go to the document control room and you can ask for a client file. What we found out is when persons were let go, they either took the file home, put the file in the shredder, or, you know, a lot of files were missing. And these files are very important is because these are the documents that we have to show up to court with. We can't show up to court without any evidence, okay? Not only are we not having evidence if the file is missing, we are required to record keep. If 10 years, not 10 years, but 5 years after the account is closed, we don't have that record or a copy of that KYC on file, we could be fined, right? And so therefore, this data or this KYC information is very important, okay? So what we had to do is go and turn the document control room off to the staff. And what we basically told them is that, listen, first of all, we are going to scan all the documents. All the documents can be viewed online. Not only are we going to scan the documents, if you still need to come and look at the physical file, you come and you sit in the document control room and you look at the physical file. You can't rearrange it. You can't take anything from it. You could perhaps get a copy, a photocopy. Okay. And this was very important too with like correspondence and where if there were issues where the customer said, oh, I did not ask for that transfer, or that's not my signature, or what have you. okay? And then even keeping the file in order, because in the filing room, you know, filing is very monotonous. People just start to stick papers all over. So that helped us to keep accountability on the files, making sure everything stayed in date order. And if anything was out of place, we could say, you can't say I give the file to Miss Bullet rearranged it, and Miss Bullet take out, but she want take out not stuff missing. So that made the document control room, you know, persons accountable. Okay, so proper record keeping in accordance with regulatory requirements. The risk is operational. What is this category? Inherent risk, inability to produce files upon request due to missing or misfile items, inability to retrieve information electronically or from storage. And again, people look at the filing department and they think, oh, these are the, well, they are the lower paid job, and people feel like it's not important, but the filing room is one of the most important areas in the organization, and you really need organized persons there to keep those files in order and to be able to archive them properly. So when they are needed, you are able to find the information you need. If you have an unorganized person, you'll never ever find what you're looking for. Okay, so a good historian needs to be there to be able to explain some of the things that happen, you know, across the file or in the organization. But like I said, it's looked as if it's the low, you know, the lowest position within the bank. However, it's very, very important. Okay. So mitigating control, all files are removed from cabinets, allowed out to relevant borrowers. Ops team encouraged to pre-use logbook at the end of the week to request any items that have not been returned. All client files are kept in individual hanging folders clearly marked to identify accounts and avoid filing errors. And how often do we check it? We check it 25% of the files. Monthly, risk will come around and check to make sure this control is being in place. But like I said, we went in and we turned off the file. So it will definitely just, the risk person now comes in and says, I'm checking to make sure everything is filed in date order. I'm checking to make sure that I can account you have 800 accounts. I need to ensure that I have 800 files. Then I'm checking to ensure that everything is scanned to the system. I'm checking to ensure that the documents on the file are visible, you know, because sometimes we make very bad copies. Okay, so this is the control library. Okay, then this is a copy of a risk assessment that we would have sent to, I think it was the central bank or the Securities Commission. Okay, so as you can see to the left, we have credit risk, market risk, interest rate risk. What we have, what the risk is, the description of concerns, and the likelihood and the impact of it happening within that particular organization. So again, it's not a one size fits all approach. Perhaps we can all copy the framework. However, the risk is different across each organization. It has to be tailored to the organization because we may not offer loans, so therefore there are no credit lists, right? You know, but to the organization that offers loans or allows their clients to leverage, then there's credit risk. We may not do foreign exchange, but to the organizations, there's forex risk that actually do it. Okay, so it has to be tailored to your institution. Okay, look at the operational risk. It says internal fraud committed by the people within the bank. Likelihood is low. And again, you can't just write. You would have to explain why you would have selected low. And of course, every organization wants to be low or medium, right? Nobody wants to be high. So each one of these, you would have to explain. Let's look at operational risk, which is high. Operational errors, loss resulting from wrong execution of client's instructions or error in inputting transactions. Okay, fat finger, your finger fat and it press the wrong key. Okay, it's high risk. We had somebody who put an extra zero on $100,000 overdraft. And so therefore it wasn't $100,000, right? And for some reason, the persons went online and they were able to see that and they wrote checks right over that $100,000, right? Did that take it to $1 million? Yeah, I think that took it to $1 million. So they wrote checks up to $1 million, okay? So again, what would be the control in place? How would you check that? We had audit go behind, and remember sometimes audit checks 25%, sometimes audit checks 100%. And it's no, in fact, not even audit, but risk. Okay, and so risk was able to see that, hey, on this loan application, the overdraft is only approved for $100,000. How are these persons writing checks up to $1 million? Okay, so you have to be very careful. That's the control there where somebody else will check. And you see there are the different risks. And then remember we talked about the 3 lines of defense. The first line is the front office receives regular training and reminders of callbacks on clients. And this is for operational risk, internal fraud committed by people within the bank. There's a 4 eyes principle in place, standardized recruitment process, standardized staff, evaluation process, background checks, new data leakage protection system implemented. And then the first line of defense for that is they receive training and reminders and they call back each client. The second line, compliance does not have any direct oversight for the callback procedure. And then the third line of defense, which is normally audit, callbacks have been the specific focus of internal auditor in the past inspection. He does a thorough check over a large sample of instructions with no adverse results. We had somebody where there was a transfer that came in and the guy said he was out on his boat and he was unable to get a call back. And so the officer said, oh, I know him, he always does this transfer. And that just happened to be fraud. But what the officer did is they stamped the transaction and they signed for it to go through. So the poster or the person processing that information put it through, because again, that's another control. You're not allowed to put through that transfer without that officer confirming that they did the callback. Lo and behold, that was $157,000. Lo and behold, it was fraud. The person was not on their boat and could be reached, and they did not authorize that transaction. So of course, that officer who put that callback on that transaction was let go. Okay, and then again, this is board oversight. There's a directive in place. There's a 4 eyes check in the system and training on the system. Okay, so this is what an assessment looks like that you would send to the regulator. And again, it's checked and it has to make sense. And based on this assessment, then they decide whether your company is high, medium, or low. Okay, Owen, so that's the assessment.
Okay, understood.
Okay, so we understand the risk library. We understand the appetite. We understand the assessment. And when we get to chapter 7, we'll talk about the risk rating. Okay, and remember now risk is done on 3 levels. At the country level, this is an assessment on the country. This is a KPMG did this assessment on the risk for the Bahamas. So at the country level, what is the country's risk and how is the country risk rated? And again, that is dependent on the financial services sector. Okay, so all of the central bank goes out to all the banks, the gaming board goes out to all the casinos and number houses, insurance commission goes out to the insurance company, they compile all this information, and they decide overall, is the country high, medium, or low? Okay, and this is what KPMG did on the country's risk assessment. Okay, so the Bahamas, they say getting started, the first principles you consider is the Bahamas National Risk Assessment, the sector, the industry, the entity specific risks, and then customer relationships. So on the commercial banking side, of course, there's no risk against Russia. But of course, on the offshore side, because I am certain none of that $4 billion in the commercial banks, none of that, well, Royal and Scotia and CIBC, Canadian, they're not going to do business with Russia way from years ago. Okay, so that has to be in some of the 100% of that in the Swiss banks. Okay, so what did they say back in, when did they do this? I think in 2018, they said what were the highest threats in the Bahamas, and next week we are going to, because chapter 6 just goes back to the statutory requirements, which a lot of us know. So we'll just spend a little time for the ones who weren't in intro talking about the 5 statutory requirements, and then we're going to actually look at the risk rating that the Securities Commission sent out for the country, and we're going to try to answer some of those questions. Okay, so they said the highest money laundering and terrorist financing threats, fraud, tax fraud, of course, money laundering, drug trafficking. We are, what did they say, a gateway to Haiti and Jamaica. And then there are domestic crimes as well, such as fraud, human, gun, and drug smuggling, trafficking, and trade-based schemes, what Mikhail talked about. Okay. The inherent money laundering risks for each sector is as follows. For the financial services sector, international bank and trust company licensees, domestic commercial banks, money transmission businesses, insurance sector, the credit unions, all of these fall under the financial services sector. And then we talk about the designated non-financial businesses. We call them the DNFBPs, right? And financial corporate service provider. And look at this, jewelry pawnbrokers and other dealers in precious stones and metals. Okay, so I'm wondering, all those jewelry stores downtown. Okay, we know there was a big problem with the cash and gold for a very long time. Are those jewelry stores downtown having to do a assessment as well? Because I know when persons come in, we had that a lot of customers out of the diamond industry. Of course, they are very high risk and they will always be checked and always being reviewed. Okay, so I'm wondering who is, I guess it'll be the Compliance Commission, and I have somebody in my other class from the Compliance Commission. So I'm going to find out exactly if they're getting risk assessments from these pawnbrokers and from these precious stones and metal dealers. Okay, and of course we know the gambling operations is dealt with by the gaming board. So I don't know why they have it under the DNFBP, because I don't think that should be there. And then the real estate sector and practitioners in legal profession, I think they didn't put the accountants in there. Okay, all of them fall under oh yeah, they have it down here. Okay.
What about the pawn shops?
Well, see, they have pawnbrokers there. They have pawnbrokers right there. But I don't think we have any more. Do we still have the cash for gold? For gold? Because I know Leslie Miller was.
No, but they have one on Carmichael Road, I think, and one on Robinson Road.
Okay.
Yeah, they do, but you have to provide ID information. So you have to complete forms when you now do that. So they do collect information.
KYC. Okay. Yes. Okay. Good. Good. Okay. So what about the jewelry stores? Are they requesting KYC?
I think it depends on the price of the jewelry. They do require some information as well. Yes.
Okay, and these people who always stealing, what it is, but they always stealing the
The
copper.
metal.
Eh?
Yeah, I don't know about the
Copper.
metal in the car. Because I think they just take your car and mash. I don't know.
Okay, okay. I'll from, like I said, my one of the ladies, she works at the compliance commission, so I will ask her, so we will see, you know, we'll know what the requirements are. Okay. Where are they now? That would have been from 218 though. And they is talking about the different types of risks. Okay, so are we somewhat clear on risk appetite, risk assessment, and then of course we know risk rating is how we are going to, how the country is going to be risk rated. When we looked at the Basel Committee, we saw the methodology of how the country is risk rated. Do we remember that? Owen, are you clear on that?
The Basel Committee,
Yeah. Let
I
me
did not too
remember
bad.
now.
The Basel Committee.
Can we just briefly?
Isn't that something like the Egmont Group?
No, no, no. Owen, you be sleeping in this class, eh? Owen, you be listening to me?
Yes, ma'am.
We only did one out of three just now, but the risk done in 3 levels. We only did country risk. What was the other 2, please?
The company's risk.
Risk is done in 3 levels.
Yeah, so the
It's
country,
risk,
the company,
company,
and then the client.
and the client. Thank you.
Yeah, and remember I said when we go to chapter 7, we look at the risk rating for the client.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we did look at this. Remember, this is the Basel Committee's website. Remember when we,
This was an intro, eh?
That was the one where we was like 6.4 or something.
yeah, we didn't look at this last
Oh,
week.
yeah.
Yes,
Good.
ma'am.
Yes, we
We
did.
looked
We
at this
did.
last week.
This
We
is the
looked at
one
this
with-
in intro, Owen, as well as
Oh,
last week.
yeah. That's when I told you about high risk and the 6.4 score with a low to medium risk.
No, medium to high risk, yeah. See, medium to high,
Okay,
right in there
understood.
somewhere. Right in there. Okay, and remember we talked about methodology. And we talked about our framework, our FATF mutual evaluation report. Remember, we were deficient in the 22 of the 40 recommendations. And so we had to ensure that we got that up to date, because how our country is going to be risk rated, that's 65%. So of course, if your mutual evaluation report is not in order, you will be high risk right off the bat. And remember, we looked at the bribery. I said the bribery index was 81, and we looked at the corruption perception. Okay, all of this is methodology of how a country is going to be risk rated. Because of course, no country is going to want to be high risk. And so they based it on this methodology. And when we get the risk rating for the client, you will see it's the same way as well. But what they use is what country is the client from? What countries do they do business with? What types of products and service they want? What are their thresholds? How often are they going to deposit? What amounts? Okay. Come on, Owen, I have to make sure that you get this.
Yes, this was a 4. Yeah, I got this.
You got that. Okay, so this is, we understand appetite, we understand assessment, and now this is rating at the country level. When we get to chapter 7, we'll see rating at the client level. Okay, we
This
good?
part was clear. This part was clear.
Okay, okay, good. Good, yeah. So again, we moved from a rules-based approach where they gave you a form and you just check the box to a risk-based approach. And that risk-based approach is based on the products and services that you offer. We moved away from the thresholds because remember I said, if you say the threshold is $5,000, they're going to bring in $499. Then when it increased to 10,000, they brought in $999. Now it's 15,000, they bring it in $1499. So the risk-based approach to that now is Owen walks into the bank, he opens an account, they give you a form, they ask you, how much money do you make a month, Owen? And Owen says, I make $2,000, but I'm gonna deposit 10. So they say, no, Owen, you have to prove where you're gonna get this extra $8,000 from a month, or we cannot create a profile that says you are going to bring in $10,000 a month. Okay, so right up front at account opening, they ask you, how often are you gonna deposit? How much money you're gonna bring in, and then they corroborate it by the information you bring in. Go ahead, Owen.
Okay, say you tell you making $2,000 a month, you bring in 10. For a countrywide, right? The law is that anything under 10,000
No.
or up to 10,000, you can deposit.
That's not a law.
Proof?
No, that's not a law. That's not a law. That's a threshold that was created, right? It's a guideline to follow. They say, you know, it's almost like best practice. And they say, we moved away from thresholds now, and it's create a profile. And within your profile, corroborate the information Owen brings in. Even though there is a threshold out there that the banks are still following, we have moved away from that. Okay, the banks just have not caught up as yet. Truly, they are supposed to be looking at your profile and seeing if you make $3,000 a month. And if you don't make $3,000 a month, then they are supposed to question you on your $3,000.
Okay. Suppose I only make $200 a week and I deposit $1,000 every week.
No, they are supposed to make you declare the source of funds. But like I said, all of the laws were changed in 2018 and the banks have not caught up yet. Imagine the banks having 10,000 accounts. Okay, the reviews are backed up. They ain't really they're looking into all the accounts that have issues first, right? After they look into accounts that have issues, then they can start fixing each account one by one. Some banks have caught up, some haven't. Okay, but you will soon see that they will say, well, Owen, when you open the account, they ask you, you still work to such and such? How much money you could deposit? Bring in your job letter, let us see. Okay, you could afford this, then we'll accept it. If you cannot afford it, then you will have to declare the source of funds. You will have to say, I just got an inheritance from my grandmother. Here's a copy of the will. I just sold a piece of property. Here's a copy of the conveyance. And then they will accept that money. And if you keep bringing in that amount, they'll say, Owen, let's look at your account again. Perhaps we need to increase your thresholds. But you have to be able to say how you are going to make this money. And you say, well, I established my own company and my company makes $1,000 a week. That's where the money is going to be coming from, and you update your account. That's how it works.
Really, like an ASUS draw?
Yeah, you bring a copy of the ASUS contract. No issue with that at all. And they're looking at regulating the ASUS under the Securities Commission, but again, regulation is expensive. That can cost so much fees. So they kind of fighting it, but they do. If you have a contract, you bring in that contract. Okay, Bonica, you wanted to say something?
I did, but you answered it. I was just gonna ask, like, how you started saying he working and he got 2,000. What happened if you get a better job, you know? But you said you just go in and you update your profile and that'll be fine. So you answered my question.
Okay, good. Yeah, because some of us had these accounts from years in high school, you know, and now we have a salary going to it. So again, like I say, the regulation just came into 2018, and then we had that big pandemic. So, you know, you have to train the staff, you have to enforce these things, you have to hire staff. It can take about 5 to 10 years for persons to catch up with these 2018 laws. Okay, institutions gotta put it in the budget to spend the money to update their system, to train their staff. So it's a process, you know. Yeah, Tania, you say factors alone cannot be helping those persons pay rent or stuff. What do you
No,
mean?
when you was talking about the regulation of the jewelry stores downtown, I was like, yeah, because I don't think tourists alone are paying them rent. I'm paying
Yeah,
this.
but they bringing in this the tourism industry where they say $7 billion a year. Eh? So where else it going? It ain't going nowhere else except downtown.
Mr.
The
Bullet,
store
if you
market.
get downtown and you see how the tourists, like most of them react, I don't think all of them spending all that money. Like for them, like from they come off the boat, you would see persons from the store markets trying to draw them in. 10 or 20 persons there trying to draw them. That's even before they hit the stores downtown. Then when they hit the stores, they looking for what they call it souvenirs. And maybe it's just I see them spending all the money. Maybe it's
Yeah, let me tell you, I have somebody in my ICA class who is saying he has a problem with those, you know, those Middle Eastern people that come and spray the perfume on your hand. He is very suspicious of them. And so he has filed an SDR to the FIU for the FIU to go and investigate them, You know, it's about 5 or 6 stores where they spray this little cream on your hand downtown. You're familiar with that?
they trying to draw you in.
Yeah, they put like the little lotion on your hand and stuff.
Yes, and then they come and try and sell you a whole slew of creams or whatever. Well, anyway, he said he don't trust them, and he's been downtown recording them and paying attention to them. But I mean, he is filed an SDR because anybody can file a suspicious transaction report. But if you work to a company, you must channel it through your MLRO. But he is not channeling that through his company. He is doing that, as a citizen, so he have them being investigated right now. And he is very adamant. And he said, Ms. Bullet, they money laundering. I'm telling you, I've been watching them. I said, okay, go right ahead. Go right ahead. So, yeah. Anyway, okay. Unit 5. And I hope you get some more clarity. And as we go, like I say, it gets clearer as we go through it. But you really have to understand. Like I said, the rest is 4 chapters, so you will see at least 2 to 3 questions, based on risk on the exam. Okay.
Okay.
So, chapter 5 says that this risk-based approach allows companies to be flexible when deciding where to concentrate their efforts. The benefits of this risk-based approach is it allows senior management in circumstances to apply its own approach to firm procedures, systems, and controls. It helps produce a cost-effective system by mitigating fines and breaches. It allows management to differentiate between customers by matching its risk to the business, and by matching it, you risk rate them as high, medium, or low. It ensures attention and resources are focused where there is greater risk. So of course, if there's a greater risk, you carry out enhanced due diligence, you increase the monitoring, you increase the amount of reviews that you and the controls that you put in place surrounding that client. Okay. This is implementing a risk-based approach. Companies should be given the opportunity to make reasonable judgments. No 2 companies are likely to adopt the same detailed practices. Regulators should identify and disseminate guidelines on sound practices, which may prove challenging to supervisory staff working to monitor compliance. So again, everything is not going to be in writing. Okay. There is international law, Bahamian law, then there are guidelines from the regulator, then there are guidelines internally from your company, and then there's best practice, okay? And best practice is not documented all the time. And like I said, in the Canadian banks, you'll find that they are less stringent. I mean, they are more stringent, they're very conservative, and they follow everything that the regulator says. In fact, their culture is that they don't ever want to be in problems with the regulator. And so they're extra careful where the regulator asks for one piece of ID, they ask you for two, because they, put in some regard for human error. However, in the Swiss banks, completely different. They don't have time, for all this paperwork. Their focus is ease of doing business. They see how competitive the offshore world is, and so they cut a lot of corners. And so if it's not right in written policy, you will find that the Swiss are not going to follow it, and that makes it very difficult for a compliance officer, because they'll say, Ms. Bullitt, show me where it's written, and I said that everything can't be written. Okay, then it's not the law. We won't get a fine. And so it's a bit difficult, more difficult to be, the guy, the Swiss, when you work in a Swiss organization, okay? And so, like I say, they don't, if it's not written, and then the law does not help you sometimes, because if you look closely at the laws, some laws say you shall do this, and other laws say you must do this, okay? But the ones that say shall, they debate that, and they say, Ms. Bullitt, we won't get in trouble, because if we have to go to court, we will say the law said shall, it didn't say must, and there's a clear distinction between both. However, if you do not do it, you will not be able to get the proper information to complete your risk assessment or to risk rate the client, okay? Because I think it says you shall get the, what it is, a job letter, or you shall declare the source of funds, okay? But if we don't declare the source of funds, how will we know that this person makes this money? If we allow Owen to come in the bank and open up an account, and they say he could bring $10,000, and these are the arguments that I've been having working in a Swiss bank. Ms. Bullitt, it says shall, I don't have to provide proof, so like I say, it's crazy. It's sometimes very difficult to manage those sales officers who, like I say, are very desperate because they don't get paid. Some of them work only on commission, and they don't get paid if these accounts don't open, okay? So they put a lot of pressure on you to approve things when all the information is not in place, okay? It says a risk-based approach should include risk identification and assessment of the customers, the products, the service, the delivery channels, the geographic areas, risk management and mitigation. Sometimes you want to mitigate or switch the risks, and that's when you get insurance. Risk monitoring, the risk owner, you want to assign to monitor some of the risks, because again, this is an entire institution. It can't be done by one person, and not only you want to monitor it, you don't just, it's very easy to write all these 10 pages of foolishness and none of it is effective. So you have to ensure that it's what Ms. Bullitt put on this paper and this risk library, it actually makes sense, okay? And then documentation, you want to ensure that you document it in policies and procedures and in job descriptions. And I know when they enforced the risk assessment in 2019 was the first year we had to do it, and if we did not submit it by June 22nd, we got a fine, and some of the credit unions did not produce it, so they got fined $50,000, and some persons got fired even. And then by October 22nd, you had to complete an enterprise-wide risk assessment, and this was in 2019. And I had the person from finance, the head of finance, come and say, well, Ms. Bullitt, I don't know anything about risk. This is a compliance function. So I said, no, it's actually a risk function, and we don't have a risk officer. However, if we did have a risk officer, they would not know the risk associated with finance. That's their job. they would not know the risk associated with credit or with HR. That's your job. And so we were nearing the deadline and these executives weren't falling into line. And so I took everybody's job description and I added it to them. You know, you will not successfully pass your goals at the end of the year if you don't get this risk assessment complete. And so we had to be very hard on them and say, we're tying this to your bonus and all sorts of threats, you know, because for the, you know, nobody wanted to do it. And so we added it to their job descriptions. And so I'm wondering, do any of you know, in terms of, this is intermediate now, so of course, all of you should be familiar with your regulators' policy and procedure. But are you familiar with your AML policy internally? Is it shared or is it a secret? Donna? Jade? Jamicio?
Good morning, Ms. Bullitt. It's shared.
It's shared, okay. And is it clear? Is it in like the laws? Is it easily interpreted in layman's terms, or they have funny words in there but nobody knows?
No, it's easily interpreted.
Okay, okay, very good. Jade, what about at your institution?
Yeah, same here. It's shared. It's easy
Okay.
accessible. All the information is on, you know, on a company local drive.
Okay, okay, very good. Okay, and that's very important because you can only mitigate risk. You cannot eliminate it, okay? And there are a lot of hackers and a lot of scammers around. And again, if your institution is infiltrated, the way that you protect yourself is being able to explain what the policy says. And you better pray that your policy does not have any gaps. And this is why I say you should also know what your regulator says and ensure that for your particular function, there are no gaps between what the regulator says and what your company says. Because remember, I used the example of Atlantis front desk was infiltrated and Scotia was the merchant for them, okay? So all those people in the merchant department at Scotiabank should have been able to explain what controls they had in place to be able to protect this service from being infiltrated by scammers, okay? And what you would find that a lot of times people can't even explain what the policy says. And this is why you get fired for negligence. And right now, this is why you go to jail, okay? Because you did not carry out proper functions to ensure that you did everything possible to safeguard that service that was being offered. Okay, so know your policy, know the procedure, and know what the regulator says, because you cannot eliminate. Okay, when assessing product and service risk, you want to ensure that you understand, and again, that's the same thing, like Atlantis front desk is considered a third party, and there are other intermediaries, person sending wires using the SWIFT system. Okay, there is cross-border corresponding banking service, private banking and wealth management. Trust, all these services are potentially high risk or could be potentially high risk. Banking in precious metals and trading and delivery, online banking, stored value cards, e-money, and international wire transfers. With cross-border corresponding banking service, we had an account out of Antigua and Barbuda, and at the back of the central bank guidelines, it used to, you know, have a schedule of Schedule 1 countries and Schedule 2 countries. And so Schedule 1 countries are countries that have the same framework in place. They follow basically the 40 recommendations and they put it into their country laws. So America, Russia, Switzerland, Bahamas are all considered Schedule 1 countries. Then there are Schedule 2 countries that have some of the laws in place, but not all of them. And one of those countries was Antigua and Barbuda. And so because they are Schedule 2 country, remember the Wolfsburg group, which is the group of the Deutsche Bank, the Wells Fargo, the Chase Bank. They regulate SWIFT, and so they don't do business with Schedule II countries. And so we had this account out of Antigua and Barbuda, and what we did is we offered them wiring service, and so through our corresponding bank. And what would happen is in Antigua and Barbuda, if you walked into the bank and you tried to open an account, you could just walk in the bank and open an account with the government ID or whatever, and they didn't need anything else. However, if you wanted to send a wire, the wire was being sent through us, which was a Schedule I country. And so therefore, if you wanted a wire, then you had to bring passport, proof of address. And I think they have something like our NID. So there was some card that they sent with a national insurance number as well. And so what they would do is if this person wanted a wire, they would bring this information into the bank in Antigua and Barbuda. That bank would then send that information to us. We would verify and keep on file their KYC, and then we would send their wire on their behalf. However, the Wolfsburg group got in contact with us and they said, we consider that nesting. They are circumventing the system. Their country needs to put the proper framework in place or their citizens are not able to send wires. Okay, and so they told us that, you know, we had 30 days to close out that account, and you know, all the money that they had on account with us, send it back to them. And so yeah, it was one of our largest accounts, and so we wrote our central bank, we wrote their central bank, and tried to get them to intervene and say that we would lose one of our biggest clients. And the Wolfsburg group said, well, if your central bank intervenes, then we will stop all correspondent banking services for your company. Okay. And so outside of this one, even though it was a very large account, we had 800 other accounts that needed to send wires back and forth every day. Because of course, in the offshore world, nobody walks in the bank and say, I want to make a deposit or withdrawal. They just send in a transfer and we use the wiring system. So we had to let that very big account go because they considered that nesting. Okay, so be very careful, because I see that's a new thing that a lot of companies are doing now. Some offshore banks have been blocked from SWIFT because they have not met certain requirements. And what they do is they just go to another offshore bank that has not been blocked and they are sending wires on behalf. I know 2 or 3 companies that are doing that right now in the Bahamas. And if they are found out, I'm very sorry for them, as well as all the staff members there, because I can promise you they will be shut down. Okay, it's just a matter of time before they're found out. So again, before you sign up, you know, and when you open these accounts, when you see institutions wanting to open accounts with you, you have to ask for their audit report. You have to find out if they're blocked for any reason. And then you cannot allow your company or allow them to circumvent, you know, the system through your company, because a lot of that is happening. And we're in an enforcement era, okay? Somebody has to go to jail. And it'll either be the compliance and the CEO, because all the politicians get off free, okay? So if these companies close down, they ain't gonna support you all legally. So be very careful of that, okay? Then the book goes on to talk about assessing delivery risk. And in the central bank guidelines and the Securities Commission guidelines, what they say is, if you're not seeing the customer face to face, that is higher risk, not meaning that overall the risk rating has to be high. Because in the offshore world, we don't ever see the customer. We have external asset managers and business introducers stationed all across the world. So we do a lot of business with Switzerland. So somebody's in Switzerland. We have a Russian portfolio. Somebody's in Russia, but I guess they're out of a job right now because everything is blocked. Then there's somebody in Latin America, somebody in Asia. And so they accept information on behalf of us, and then they just email it into us. So we have not ever met these customers, and a lot of times we don't even speak to them. They speak on behalf of us, and so there are contracts between us and the external asset manager where they have to sign off that they are an external asset manager. They are guided under Bahamian law, and they understand that the KYC practices of the Bahamas are, and they follow that. So that's how it works in the offshore world. Okay, so not that overall your risk rating will be high, but there are like 10 to 14 categories, and that should be a category on your risk rating when you're risk rating a customer, whether or not you saw them face to face. Because of course, we know there's a lot of technological scamming. And then assessing the customer again, and that's the same thing as getting the KYC, carrying out the due diligence, and then risk rating that client, whether they are high, medium, or low. And then there's geographical and country risks. There are countries that the effort. Sorry?
Before you go forward, before what you were speaking to just now, that would be an example of how outsourcing could be a risk.
Yeah, delivery risk, yes, as well, yeah. So what happens with outsourcing, not only do you have to ensure that they sign off on Bahamian law. So our AML policy, we have cut out like the 5 statutory requirements, and we send that to them, and they sign that they understand what Bahamian law says. Not only that, a very big thing now is that we have to check on their disaster recovery plan, because a lot of our systems were in the Channel Islands, and let's just say their building burned down, or they had a hurricane that wiped them out, right? And so therefore, each year now we have them attest that their disaster relief plan is up to date. They are aware of Bahamian law, and this is what they are following, when they do our system or our background, Trinidad, everything outsourced to Trinidad and with that Dominican Republic for cheap labor. So all of that, we have them attest to us each year that they, the agreement stands. Yeah. And again, that's what audit is checking for, that you're getting those attestations. Okay, so back to geographical risk again, the FATF have identified countries with strategic deficiencies. You have to follow what the international regulators say. And like I said, when we went into New York and tried to open up that account, they said we don't do risk. We don't do accounts for high-risk countries. It's not in our appetite. And we said, our country is not high risk, but they said it's perceived to be high risk. Can you prove it? And no, the last time the assessment was done, it was in 2014. We have a 215, 216. They laughed at us. They said, come on, Ms. Bullard, we can't accept that. And they did not open that account for us. Okay. And then you want to look at major drug producing and transit countries. What are we? What is the Bahamas?
Country for drugs.
Transit.
Okay, so again, they was looking at that. You medium risk, use a transit country. You have 22 deficient recommendations. We can't do business with you, right? Not making efforts to confront or eliminate human trafficking. First of all, how many people charged with human trafficking? And of course, all right, Renika, smuggler's paradise, right? And the one person or 2 persons that the US catch, because we cannot catch nobody, we writing recommendations for their philanthropic
contributions. So that's another story. Yeah, so vulnerable to bribery or corruptions. Not our good Bahamas. Not us. We don't do them things. Politically unstable. Like I said, Brazil. We had all over the Caribbean, presidents have been impeached. China has, had this thing of lending money to countries that they were unable to pay, like how they lended us this big $192 million to build this port. Well, in Guatemala and in 3 or 4 other African countries, they loaned money, they were unable to pay, and so they acquired their port. So each person that comes into the port pays $15, and I think we have, 6,000 to 7,000 persons coming in a day. So multiply that by 15 every day. We have 6 cruise ships the other day. Multiply that by 15 every day. Could you imagine how much money that port makes? And then remember, we have the 2nd largest ship registry, right? But Owen, back to your tax evasion thing. Remember now, when all those ships, where were they parked during the pandemic? Because the United States said, you're going to the Bahamas because y'all wanted not to pay tax. And so y'all register your ship on the Bahamas. So y'all don't pay no tax to us. So it's a pandemic and the cruise ship shut down, going there in water. So they were all parked out in the back of the Berry Islands, during the pandemic. And when it was time to give funding or aid, the United States says, no, go to that country which you run to. And so I hope, well, I guess it did work. Nobody who is registered here look to the Bahamas, because the Bahamas, you not money to give his own people, right? Much less all the workers off the cruise ship. The cruise ship couldn't come and look to us to borrow a cent, right? And so that's what how taxes work. When you are in need, you would have paid tax every year. And so when you are in need, the government should have a surplus to be able to give you back something, right? But you could come register here and you could come get your citizenship and do everything. But if something happened, and I think our law even says that, does anybody know? Our NID law says that you contribute, but you don't get anything back as a foreigner. Does anybody know?
I know for contributors, they can. It depends on what it is, they can claim.
Expats too?
No, I don't think, I'm not sure.
For expats, it's more like a liability thing.
No, because the thing about it is work permit holders, I mean, if you are unemployed, you have to go back to your country. So there's no, even though you contribute, you cannot get unemployment. I think it is. Because the condition is if you are unemployed, you go back to your country.
You don't get unemployment, but you still get a pension.
Oh, you get a pension. Okay.
Yes, and so, yeah, they can move back to their country, but still have a BSD account for their NID pension to go to.
Oh, okay, okay. So it's just unemployment you can't get. Okay. And then excessive secrecy laws. So of course, even if we did away with all our secrecy laws, but we still have a confidentiality clause to our customers. Okay. But when it comes to international regulators, the FTRA trumps that confidentiality law. And then I think the Data Act, all of that allows us to share that information regarding taxes to the various countries. Okay. And then again, like we said, a risk assessment is only as good as the day that it is conducted. Ms. Bullitt teaching this class right now, but it's still a pandemic and I got to pay my mortgage and I got to feed my children. So I going out there to get this little money. What did the guy come in and tell Ms. Bullitt? Ms. Bullitt can go hit a lick, right? And I can need that little drug money so I can survive and I can pay my bills, right? So it's only as good as the day it is done, okay? So it has to constantly be updated. It has to be current. It has to be checked to make sure it makes sense, because I have a lot of people that just sit down in the office and they put all kind of foolishness on paper, and the thicker you make something, the less persons would read. So you just make it very thick and you could write a whole bunch of garbage. And I've seen it done, believe it or not. You could write a bunch of foolishness, just write it on 20 pages, nobody will read it. Okay? And it has to make sense and has to be checked. Okay? And then there are different types of risks that you have to be aware of. It's criminal risk, regulator risks, legal risks, from a breach of contract, reputational risk. And I was at the Royal Bank of Canada Trust. And nice job at Life Key for 16 years. And we had artwork from again, our largest customer. And if you know anything, I don't know if I told you all the story. If you know anything about trust, trust accounts are legal entities itself. And so the settler of the trust would write a letter to the bank saying, I wish that you take instructions from Tennille Bean. And so Tennille Bean would write in every time she wanted a transfer and say, I wish that you transfer this. I wish that you pay my children's school fees. I wish that you pay the travel agent so my family could go on a vacation in Switzerland. And so we got in a request. I wish that you open up a storage facility in France for us. So of course, nothing goes into Neil's name. Everything goes into the Royal Bank of Canada. So we went into France and we looked around for a store at all. We found one that was large enough to hold these paintings. And we had the delivery driver go from the art shop, a very large art shop in France, and deliver the art into this very big storage facility. Now we had these big binders, and like I say, just make it thick. Nobody will read. You could do all the fraud in the world, but we ain't do that. So there's big binders would have like 1,000 pages each, and each one had a copy of the art, the price of it, who the owners were, and so we sent transactions back. It was very active, almost 6 to 7 transactions a day, selling art, purchasing art, moving the art around. So here it is. That storage facility was in the Royal Bank of Canada, and there was a big investigation going on in France. Why we didn't know about it, I don't know. Why the person who was in charge of this account wasn't reading, why not all of us, I guess, all of the parties involved did not know that the art that we had put in the storage facility was stolen. So here it is, billions of dollars worth of art in the storage facility. The police finally track it down, get a subpoena, went in and searched. And who does the storage facility belong to? The Royal Bank of Canada. Okay, this was our largest customer. And Royal Bank has 5 entities. It's Royal Capital Markets, Royal Finco, Royal Commercial, Dominion Securities, and at that time it was private banking and trust. And to avoid, we were very, very profitable. To avoid reputational risk, we just closed. And they channeled the money into developing the capital markets business. And they closed out the trust because every day we were being in the news. Every day they were saying, you know, the staff were involved, and we knew persons had to fly to France to go to court. When they asked us for the KYC, when I copied the books, these finally, the 1,000 pages, I finally looked through it, and lo and behold, there was a picture of the stolen art right there with no owner to the bottom. So we should have questioned that if we had done proper due diligence. At least the account officer for, in fact, this account was so large, they had 2 to 3 trust officers working on this account. Nobody ever looked through the book. And as, like I said, we had to photocopy all of this. I was the operations manager, and we sent this to the Supreme Court in France, and all the information was right there. So at first, Royal Bank was charged with tax evasion, but we were able to win that case. And then they would charge with, I guess, all the stolen art. working in cahoots with Keneal, right? And so we closed down. 33 persons went home just to avoid reputational risk. Okay, so that's how serious reputational risk is. Okay, and then concentration risk too, back to that account that we held for Antigua and Barbuda. They were our largest account, and it was a government account as well as one of the major banks there, and they had all their money in the bank with us. And central bank told them if we failed, then they would fail. And so they had all their eggs in one basket, too concentrated. So they told them to move some of the money out of our institution and put it either in another country or in another bank. Okay. And then, of course, you know, there's credit risks. If you give these people a loan outside of what they qualify for, they can't pay. Financial risks, all sorts of risks. Okay.
Sorry, Ms. Bullock, can you explain concentration risk again? I don't quite understand it.
Okay. All your eggs in one basket. So if Miss Bullet banks fail and all your money in Miss Bullet Bank, you will fail as well, right? Because my bank shut down. Central bank don't say send all the money back to the people who you owe or who money it is, and then we could close you down. No, they come and give you a written say you shut down today. Your SWIFT turn off. You can't send no more wires. So we have to prosecute you. So once you go to litigation, that bank in Antigua and Barbuda, their money blocked up, right?
Correct. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So you can't be too concentrated. You can't have all your eggs in one basket. So put some money in the Bahamas and put some in Switzerland. Put some in the US. So if Bahamas shuts down, you can still get your money. Yeah. Or put some in Scotia and Royal, like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions or concerns? No? Okay, so we have some classwork. You can use the remainder of the time to catch up on your classwork to make sure you understand the questions and can answer them properly. And that's the whole point. So practice. Once you practice, it becomes clearer. Once you see the type of questions that are asked in regards to risk, it becomes clearer. Go ahead, Felicia.
Morning, everyone. Quick question, please. Just in case I'm using the classwork to furnish my notes for studying. If I can get them to like a concise response, is it possible once I send them well in advance for you to look them over and make sure I'm on the right track?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and enough time now because
yes, ma'am.
I spoke to somebody on Monday. I told them I was very busy, but I will help them. I said, send me your paper. This is a paper for ICA. I said, send me your paper. I'm going to review it and get back to you on Sunday. Now they sending me a 3,500 word paper. Do you know that I received the paper in my inbox today at 9 a.m. and then the person said, can I call you now so we can go through this?
Oh no, I wouldn't do that to you. Definitely, they would definitely like credit note, like little notes, because you know with the exam, you have to. I just want to make sure I have my main points, and I'll just furnish the points once I can solidify that I have a good grasp on what I want to talk about to get as much points as I can. But I ain't doing all that 3,500, no, ma'am.
Yeah, great.
Okay,
So I'm just saying what I'm faced with now. This person is saying, but Ms. Bullet, you said you would help me. Yeah, I said I would help you last week. Not 30 minutes before I have a class, homework to mark, and you want this information for tomorrow. Okay, so please, you get it to me in enough time, I'll be able to get it back to you. Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Bullet, before we go, when the chapter, this particular chapter we're doing now spoke to the measures taken to manage and mitigate it as talking about like monitoring, reporting, and onboarding processes, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? Okay, now quite a few of you would have completed question 1, very good. Most of you got a grade, would have gotten full points. A few of you sent it in. Either didn't say they wanted it for a grade, but they sent it in late. So if you sent it in late, I automatically assume that you do not want to lose 10 points. And so I gave you feedback. If I give you feedback and I say you would have gotten full points, please don't come. I have 5 of you asking me to please grade it now. It doesn't work that way. Okay? If you either send it in for a grade or you send it in for feedback. If it's for feedback, because you get feedback, you cannot get a grade on it because the papers have to be marked and then cross-marked. And if you sent it in late, I did not send it to get cross-marked. And I didn't send it, if you ask for feedback, I didn't send it to get cross-marked. Okay, so it's either you want feedback or you want it to be graded. Okay, and like I said, it's very easy to get 100%. It's very easy. So whatever you send in on time before the date, that's what you would get a grade for. Okay, and like I say, we are on week 5. Please do not wait till the last question to scramble before the exam to find out that you are not on the right track. Because I have a lot of persons doing that. And a lot of persons waiting last minute and finding out that they need help. You have sufficient time now. And I promise you, if you do it now, you will be successful. I cannot promise you that. Okay, so clear your schedules, ask for some time, ask for some help at home. It's 5 more weeks, very crucial, lots of information. You need to unwind, you need to feel good, your head need to be clear, you need to be able to pay attention, okay? And then, like I say, you could get back to your regularly scheduled program. I have persons repeating the course over and over just because they're too busy. Okay, so you have to ask for help. With any class you take in, not just this, any class that you take in, speak to your significant other or family members and ask them to help you. Speak to your job, I'm in a class, I may need some extra time. By now, you should have already scheduled your study days. Okay, it's a lot of information, but if you organize yourself, it's very achievable. And I continuously say that. But the key is to organize yourself. Okay? And get into the network, into the chat with, I guess, the WhatsApp group and try to support each other. Okay, please, 10 of you don't go to one meeting and then one person speak and nobody can tell me for the meeting, because that's what happened in intro. If you want to get your 5%, it's a bonus. You go to the meeting and you come and speak to the class on behalf of yourself. Okay, that's how it works.
Shout out and thank you to Owen for consistently posting the meetings in the group, even though some of us don't make it. Thank you, Owen.
Yes, very, very good. He has been always very consistent.
You're welcome.
With that. So good work, Owen. Good work. Okay, so any other questions or concerns? Chapter 6 next week.
Yes.
Like I said, it just goes over what we went through about the statutory requirements and due diligence. Is just a repeat to give you a refresher, because like I said, due diligence in the 40 recommendations, from recommendation 10 all the way to 24, 14 of those recommendations are specific to due diligence. So they repeat it and give a refresher. However, the Securities Commission early in the year sent out a risk assessment that they wanted the sector to answer. And if you don't answer it, they send reminders. We only received 10% responses. This information is crucial, whatever. So we'll look at that and we'll see the type of questions that they're asking and see if we can answer some of them. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? No? Okay, guys. Well, have a fabulous weekend. I hope you get to relax and unwind and feel good. And then we'll do this again next week.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.